The headline in front of you is from the Times of Israel, citing the Wall Street Journal. It says Donald Trump was seriously considering withdrawing from the agreement, or rather the negotiation tables with the Iranian side. He was reportedly ready to make that decision at any moment. But then we have Axios telling us today that the Americans have actually agreed to change the location of the negotiations from Turkey to Oman. There is a significant shift. How was Donald Trump about to withdraw from the talks, and yet now he's fulfilling Iranian demands? The truth is, this situation is entirely related to two incidents that occurred 48 hours ago. And yes, I know I'm a little bit late in covering this news, but believe me, I'm here to comment on it for a very good reason. Social media and news broadcasts have interpreted this as a specific type of accident, but I'm here to tell you that this isn't really the case. I'm here to tell you the real cause, why Iran did it, and the specific details, because this reveals the chaotic scenes that took place inside the White House immediately after these incidents. But did you notice something? I just cited the Times of Israel, Axios, and the Wall Street Journal. And one says Trump is walking away, the other is saying he is caving in. This isn't just news, this is information warfare. If you're only reading one side, you aren't getting the full truth. You are getting a narrative. And this is why I use ground news for every single script I write. Ground news doesn't just aggregate headlines, it exposes the bias behind them. It shows you which stories are being pushed by the left and which are being pushed by the right. And most importantly, what stories one side is completely hiding from you. Because when the Financial Times mentions a detail and Fox News ignores it, ground news highlights that blind spot instantly. In a geopolitical crisis like this, you cannot afford to be blind. You need the full intelligence picture. I want you to have the same tools I use to track these narratives, and I've partnered with them to give you 40% of their Vantage plan. That is their highest tier with unlimited access to their news, data, and analysis tools. So yeah, just click on the link in the bio, grab the Vantage plan, and see who's actually pulling the strings behind the headlines. Now, let's get back to what happened, because the stakes in the region are higher than they've ever been in decades. The new information we have today might be different from what you've heard, specifically regarding the downing of an Iranian aircraft. So what happened? 48 hours ago, two incidents occurred that I found incredibly strange, both in their timing and their method. They started with small speedboats belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and these are two small boats armed with gunmen attempting to intercept an oil tanker. This tanker was coming from the coast of Malaysia and had just crossed the Strait of Hormuz. But as soon as it crossed, these two armed vessels belonging to the IRGC tried to board the ship. They were threatening the captain, trying to force him to slow down, and they were actively attempting to hijack this tanker. This continued until a US destroyer intervened, moving at high speed to save the vessel. Now keep in mind, the US destroyer wasn't just going to fire on the boats. It already had special forces on board, ready to resist any hijacking attempt. And the Iranians eventually retreated. And this was the first incident. Now, the news bulletins explained this to you as simple, an attempted hijacking of an oil tanker, but no one focused on what the Financial Times reported. The Financial Times reported that this ship was actually a supply vessel for the US Army. That changes everything. It means Iran is tracking the supply lines of the US military, and the attempt to hijack it was serious. They wanted to board it. If that US destroyer hadn't arrived in time, that hijacking would have succeeded. And the Iranians, of course, had their excuse. They said, this ship entered Iranian waters and we just wanted to detain it, but it's fine, no harm done. That's what they said. But then the second incident occurred, and this one was even stranger. An Iranian drone was launched and headed directly toward the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. Now, I've told you before, the most dangerous thing for an aircraft carrier is to be found, and clearly the Iranians found it. Even though the Abraham Lincoln had turned off its signals and transponders and all of these things after crossing the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, military sites suggest it's currently stationed off the coast of Oman. And the drone was heading near the carrier. It was detected, and an F-35 fighter jet was scrambled. The F-35 performed a vertical takeoff and immediately immediately went to intercept the drone, shooting it down at close range to the carrier. The Americans were saying, "We don't understand." They're asking if this drone was coming to track the plane, to spy, to strike. Because usually, this specific drone type is a one-way suicide drone. It goes and it doesn't come back. So were the Iranians actually trying to hit the US aircraft carrier 2 days ago? Here's a detail they didn't tell you. Why did the US launch an F-35 and not just any other jet? Because it could take off vertically and engage immediately. The surprise didn't end there. The Iranians reportedly launched another drone later, which the Americans didn't shoot down, at least as far as I know, but it also sent to scout the carrier. The Iranians effectively announced, "We have located the USS Abraham Lincoln," and that is a very strong signal. As soon as these two incidents happened, it caused a massive shockwave in America. Why? Because according to the Financial Times, and I'm focusing on them today because they have the best sources right now, this provocative operation hit Donald Trump at the time when sources say the Iranians were making very strange demands. First, Iran demanded that the negotiation scheduled for Friday must be limited only to the Iranian nuclear file. They refused to open any other subject. Meanwhile, the Americans, through Steve Witkoff, had already told the Iranians, "Before we sit down on Friday, we are discussing 4 demands. The nuclear file, a total halt of enrichment, meaning not just handing over your 60% enriched uranium, but stopping enrichment altogether, the missile program, and the militias, ending their regional proxy support." And Iran replied, "No, we will discuss one thing." But they also said, "We want to change the location. We don't want Turkey. We want Oman." And this put immense pressure on the president. And not just him, but his aides, because the tensions in the Persian Gulf is exploding. This was a signal from Iran to America. "We know where your carrier is. We can track your army supplies. We can hijack the ships. We can close the Strait of Hormuz." Iran wants to look strong entering these negotiations. They know America has the upper hand. If you're following me on Instagram, you saw yesterday I posted the massive extent of the US military buildup in the region. So Iran needed leverage. They needed to show they have the cards to play too. And let me add something critical. When reports started to surface in the media that Iran might agree to stop enrichment or close reactors, the Washington Post reported that Steve Witkoff got a call from the Iranians directly telling him that, "No, we aren't doing that. We won't transfer uranium to Russia. We're backtracking on that." So what is the surprise? The surprise is that Donald Trump, after thinking about ending talks and striking Iran, he reversed course. He said, "No, I will continue the negotiations. We will meet them on Friday." And not only that, he conceded to the venue change. They will meet in Oman. They're already arriving there. But Trump said something to reporters that not a lot of people caught up on. He said negotiations with Iran will not be held in one place. They will be held in multiple places at the same time. What does he mean by that? He means that Iran will have to send officials to talk to Americans in multiple countries, not just one. Trump hopes to show the Iranians that they are negotiating with the entire region. Because if war happens, Iran won't just fight the Americans. They will fight the region. Iran has already threatened to hit US bases in the Gulf, which means the Gulf states like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all of these will be dragged to support them. So what should we expect? A deal or a war? I'll tell you this. Both sides are entering negotiations, but the statements coming out of both of them are about war. The rhetoric of war is much louder than the rhetoric of peace. And every time Trump shows flexibility, it implies the strike, if it comes, will be devastating. Look at the Iranian side. MPs in the Iranian parliament are screaming for a preemptive strike. They're saying we won't wait to be hit. If they feel the negotiations aren't serious or that America is obsessed with their missile program, they might withdraw and strike the US bases immediately. The Iranian side is on high alert. By attacking supply ships and carriers, they are trying to send a message to Trump. Your fears about this war will come true. Trump told his generals he wants a military operation that is fast, strong, decisive, and fruitful. Iran is telling him, no, if you enter this, it will be long, it will not be decisive, it will be expensive, it will be a Vietnamese-style quagmire, but worse, because we will hit your forces on the ground. Iran is reminding him that the war will happen at the Strait of Hormuz, where 20 to 25% of oil exports pass. So just these two faint operations yesterday pushed Brent crude to nearly $70. Imagine if war actually breaks out. Oil goes over 100 immediately. Iran knows America cannot sustain high oil prices for long. On the other hand, consider the Israeli angle. Trump is heavily restraining Israel. When Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with Netanyahu, Israeli media reported that the Israelis asked the Americans to let them strike Iran first, just like they did in the 12-day war. Why? To create an exit strategy. If Israel starts it, Iranian missile target Israel, and then the US steps in to help, then Trump can de-escalate it later. But if the US starts it, there's no exit. Trump has to finish it. While reading a couple of articles, the New York Times reported something interesting. They say that Trump is starting to doubt if a war would actually change the regime in Iran. They fear the bombs might drop, but the regime might stay. They're banking more on an internal coup or an uprising. Here's the key. Trump will halt any military operation against Iran for 2 weeks. And this tells me that the negotiations won't be one session. There will be rounds. And during these 2 weeks, no strikes. But the US military will continue to pile assets into the region. The reality, Iran is doing everything to avoid military strikes. Because the regime is exhausted, mind you. They have fought too many wars recently. They're fighting on their own soil. Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran. Israel struck them, then struck them again. The US hit their nuclear facilities. The regime is tired. The supreme leader is frail. And the thing they fear the most isn't the US Air Force. It's the Iranian people. They fear that if they're busy fighting the Americans, a revolution or a coup will happen inside Tehran. That is what could topple the regime. So is a deal coming? Personally, I think a deal between Trump and Khamenei is impossible. This is the Trump who ordered the strike on Soleimani. This is the Trump who bombed them during negotiations before. The sound of war is louder, and you won't see any American officials saying Iran accepted this clause. It's all tension, and they've been already negotiating for the past 23 years. Both sides are masters of wasting time. I'm telling you this truthfully and as neutrally as I can possibly be, so you get a full picture of what is going on. You see, war is closer than peace. Trump is entering these talks to wash his hands of responsibility, to say, I tried before he struck. The situation is critical, but this was just my piece, and what is more important is hearing what you think in the comments down below. Finally, I hope you found value, and if you did, drop a like, and to watch more videos like this, consider subscribing to WMX Intel to stay ahead of the curve.